Hi, Writing 350. The purpose of this video today is to take you through the process of developing a proposal with your team. So I want to kind of just walk you through each of the pieces of the proposal process. So the first thing to understand is that the proposal is essentially a persuasive document where you're asking for the time and money to do a full-on research project, right? So you do not have to have all of your research completed at this stage. What you're really trying to do is understand the depth of the problem and ask for more time to do further research. So you don't have to come up with a solution to your problem at this point. You don't have to fully understand it, but really, I guess, all of the nuances, but understand how it came to be, kind of the problem that's creating for the company, and what you're going to do to find out more. And then asking them, hey, this is what we know so far, and this is what we would like to do. Let us do it. So people get confused about the purpose of a proposal very easily. So make sure you look at the sample in your book and the student samples to kind of understand the differences. One thing you'll notice in the student samples is most of them are about local problems. I've been doing that a little bit more frequently in the course. So some of your information will be slightly different in that you'll have more specific information because you're talking about a public company where you can have more of that information, but you'll have less of the interview type of information and things like that, because of course you can't meet with somebody if you're writing about Google or whatever. So these are all the different sections of a proposal. You want to make sure that you're setting it up in the format of a memo. You don't need a cover page to do it. And I'll kind of just walk you through briefly each of these types or each of these pieces of the proposal itself. So starting with the introduction, basically this is kind of like a brief blurb at the beginning, right? You're summarizing the subject and the purpose of your proposal, and just giving a brief relevant background information. So it's really just a sort of brief overview of the situation. So my example, excuse me, for this is the problem that Grand Valley, if I was writing about a problem Grand Valley is having, they can't attract enough students to their children's lit major, right? So we have to understand the depth of that problem, what's at stake, who it matters to, things like that. So that's kind of the extended example I'll be using throughout the rest of these slides. So we need to describe the problem to make it very clear, right? That needs to be solved, the opportunity, what happens, right, if it's not going to be solved. So in the case of the children's lit major, right, we need to understand, okay, this is what's happening, this is what has trended, this is what's causing it, right? Maybe people are going towards degrees, there's growth area in STEM, or there's growth area in business. People are less attracted to the humanities. And what's going to happen if we continue to see a dip in enrollment, right? We might lose, some of the instructors, we might lose this as a potential major, what's going to happen, what's at stake. So we're kind of giving an overall look at the problem, as well as then adding the next section is the background, right? What's the history of the issue? How did it come to be, right? So if you're writing about a big company, you hopefully can find out some of this information, right? You can understand the process that this sort of took to become where it is. So say you're writing about Facebook, and the problem is that they're losing Generation Z interest, right? We can kind of look at the trend of users and kind of see where that dropped off, how that dropped off, how their reputation changed for that age group and things like that, right? We can kind of find that out through research, both, with Facebook and news articles and things like that. So you want to give more detail probably in this section. This will be one of the longer ones. The problem and background will be a few of your longer ones. Then you need to break down your audience type. So you'll have it set up this way exactly with a gatekeeper, primary, secondary, auxiliary, and watchdog audience. This information is also in chapter 1 of your book. So if you're having trouble discerning between the different types, this may be a place to do it. But these are kind of the questions that you need to ask yourself, right? And discerning which audience type it's going to be. So Just a hint for you, the gatekeeper in all of yours is me, because I'm the one reading and approving your proposals. So I'm the one who can kind of say, yes, no, this can go on. And then you can kind of go through each piece of the audience types and decide what they might be. Then you want to look at topics to investigate. This section can be broken down into kind of bullets or a numbered list. You need to figure out, okay, this is the information that we have, right? Going back to that Facebook example, we know that it's more popular, or it's less popular, I'm sorry, for Gen Z. So and we kind of have an understanding of how that came to be. Now we need to understand, okay, what's next? What do we need to kind of understand to continue forward in our research? So you don't have to answer all of these questions at this point, but what will you have to understand to solve the problem? So you will have at least 3 or 4. There could be kind of subtopics underneath. What questions do we have? So we need to understand, okay, what are they using instead? What are their current opinions? What are the competitors doing? What are the features of Facebook that are not being used? Like all of that kind of stuff we kind of want to understand more in depth, right? These are the things we need to understand to be able to try to give a recommendation to Facebook to make themselves more appealing to that generation. So there can be any number of questions, but again, you don't have to have the answers to those, but that's what you're saying. This is what we're going to research as we go forward. Then you will list the methods and research that you plan to use. So as I said before, a lot of the student samples have a lot of primary sources, meaning like surveys, interviews, things like that. You may have survey if you wish. You can survey a group of people to kind of get their impressions or of the company that you're working with or things like that if you think that has value. Probably a lot of you will be using secondary sources, right? Stuff from the companies directly, news articles, journal articles, things like that. So you're thinking about what kind of stuff are we going to look at to do our proposal. So this is a list of citations in APA format. So you just kind of want to compile, here's all the stuff we're going to research as we go forward. Then you want to list your specific qualifications. That's your next section. So each of your team members will need to contribute something to kind of say, all right, this is a persuasive document. If there was other people vying for this job, what makes us qualified versus someone else? And you might be like, I don't know, I don't have any qualifications, right? You're going to have to kind of pull out something to think about what knowledge, what skills, have you taken classes? Do you have a previous job? What activities have you done as a researcher, as a writer, as an editor, right? As someone who can work with data, anything that would convince someone that you are qualified to do the job that you're asking to do. Next, you want to make a work schedule. So do not just list the due dates, right? I already know that information. So think about making a timetable of, okay, we're going to have this process done by this time. We're going to spend this much time writing, this much time editing, this much time revising, things like that, and break it down. And you'll see several examples of those in the book and the student samples. But if you are just listing, this is due this day, this is due this day, then you're doing that incorrectly. And then finally, you'll end with a call to action. So this is sort of your closer, like, please approve us, give us the opportunity to complete this project, and here's sort of the reasons all together as a final kind of way to convince the person who's reading it, in this case me, to approve you and to continue forward. So that's kind of your last piece. So these tend to be 4 to 7 pages. Yours may be a little bit longer this semester, only because you're working with companies that have a lot more readily available information at this stage than people who are working on local problems. So your problem and background sections may be a little longer than you see in the samples. So make sure to fill those out. And you are able to use that information again in your formal report. So if you put more work into it now, you can kind of bring a lot of that stuff over into the formal report phase. So it won't be kind of for no reason, it will come up again. So if you have any questions about the proposal, please contact me. But hopefully this is helpful to you as you're kind of going through that process. So good luck, and I look forward to reading them.